Здравствуйте, уважаемые участники. Добро пожаловать на панельную дискуссию Green Swan Solutions, как железные дороги задают глобальные экотренды. Меня зовут Сергей Малоземов. Я журналист, автор научно-популярных программ на телеканале НТВ, автор документальных фильмов, в том числе о железных дорогах, так что тема мне тоже близка. Я буду сегодня модерировать эту дискуссию, которая пройдет в гибридном онлайн-офлайн режиме. С нами здесь, в этой студии, Филипп Пегарье, президент Альстом Россия, и Андрей Владимирович Птичников, замруководителя Центра ответственного использования ресурсов Института географии РАН. И по видеосвязи с нами Сергей Кобзев, замгендиректора, главный инженер ОАО «РЖД», Александр Либеров, президент Siemens в России, Тату Томинин, старший вице-президент VR Group «Железные дороги» Финляндии, Юрий Завенович Саакян, гендиректор Института проблем естественных монополий, и Михаил Анатольевич Рожков, технический директор АО «Трансмаш Холдинг». Мы все с вами знаем о политических решениях.
Mikhail Rashkov, the technical director of Transmash Holding. We are all aware of the political decisions made by our leaders at the highest level to reduce the carbon footprint of our economy, and this goes beyond moving to the renewables, but also includes the new regulation. How can we assess the impact of the economy on the environment? It's not a secret that they consider coal transportation by rail, for example, a part of the railway's carbon footprint. So we'll discuss this and other topics. But first, let me start the poll for our online audience.
Вопрос такой. Какой способ повышения экологичности железнодорожных перевозок вы считаете
So the question is, what do you think is the most promising way to increase the environmentability of Russian railways?
Или внедрение интеллектуальных логистических систем?
There are four options, and please select the one that you prefer. And we will follow up on the results of the poll in the end of our panel discussion. But first, let me invite Sergei Kobzev, the Deputy Managing Director and Chief Engineer of Russian Railways, to speak. How would you answer this question, and what is the position of Russian Railways operating in such sensitive and vulnerable areas like the Lake of Baikal, for example? We know that you have a huge network. How do you increase your environmentability? Good afternoon. If I were to choose the answers to this question, I would select the first three, because this is what we're doing now. We are electrifying our network. In parallel, we are developing alternative energy sources, both for locomotives and for our buildings and infrastructure. I would choose option B as the one that has the widest meaning, but A and C, they don't really contradict our general policy. Sergei, are we starting the tour de table, or can I continue with my speech? Well, I would invite everyone to answer this question before their speech in the very beginning. Well, we would be happy to hear about the vision of Russian railways. I would like to start by saying that environment is a top priority for Russian railways. We are implementing a set of measures to reduce our environmental footprint. We are implementing innovative environmentally safe technologies, our strategic priority is to comply with the environmental and sustainability goals by introducing energy-efficient and material-saving technologies, ensuring the safety of all the vulnerable ecosystems. We are committed to the principles of the Global Compact. We continue increasing the environmentability of our network and rolling stock. Russia is now #1 in terms of railway freight and #4 in terms of passenger carrying by rail. One of our priorities, as I said, is ensuring the minimum environmental impact on vulnerable ecosystems. In line with this priority, we are developing the regulatory and methodological documents which will govern all our activities in this respect. Let me remind you that railway transport as such is the most environmentally friendly mode of transportation, with the overall greenhouse gas emission rate of 1.8%. To achieve this target, we need to make sure that 85% of all freight and 86% of all passengers are moved using electric traction. And as I said, electrification of our network is one of our strategic focuses. This enabled Russian railways to become one of the first Russian companies to issue green bonds. Another important environmental indicator is our share in the total pool of companies with environmental impact in Russia. Our share is less than 1%. In our development master plan, we pay a lot of attention to that, and this defines our coming projects to electrify the Far Eastern network and the development of the European network. To maintain our leadership positions in terms of energy efficiency on the global market, we implement a large-scale energy efficiency program. Considering the fact that most of our costs belong to traction, that is 86% of all the power consumption, and we would like to leverage this factor. Starting from 2006, we have been introducing energy-efficient technologies for our locomotives, so all the train drivers are equipped with special systems which help them to increase the energy efficiency.
I think we're going to scale up this project across the Russian Railways network. Another important area of operations of the company to reduce CO2 emissions and green gases would be using gas motor fuel instead of diesel. And now we work quite actively with the projects, and next year we're going to receive such projects to modernize the engines and locomotives and converting them into using gas, which would really reduce the impact on the environment quite significantly. We also concluded quadrilateral agreement between Russian Railways, Transmashholding and others to prepare the infrastructure to manufacture, to produce gas fuel for the engines and building specialized filling stations. By 2030, we plan to have the engines, locomotives, to work on natural gas, and they will be operated not only within the Sverdlov section of the railway, but they would be also going into the northern latitudes and other sections of the railway, and the share of such locomotives will be growing. Of course, the most environmentally clean resources are those renewable sources, where you have almost zero emission of harmful substances, and we are quite active in installing such environmentally friendly technologies as thermal pumps, and actually they are being installed in many of the railway stations for heating purposes. In the Caucasus section of the railway, we also launched a solar station, and all of that energy goes to power a locomotive pool. We are also converting our heat and water supply facilities from diesel fuel to renewable sources, and we are going to really get rid of 134 black oil operated stations to cleaner fuels. Our policy actually demonstrated that we made the right choices and priorities, and based on the performance of the last 17 years, and we're actually trying to follow our story from 2003, when the Russian Railways were established. We managed to reduce the emissions by 85%, and the rolling stock turnover improved by 22%. Since 2014, in the offices of Russian Railways, in terminals, we also collect garbage separately. The company, we of late received a lot of information about the construction or rehabilitation of the area adjacent to Lake Baikal, near the reserves and parks there. I should inform you that we actually additionally committed to protect the environment around Lake Baikal, and together with the government of Irkutsk region and Buryatia, and with the engagement of all societal groups, we have about 35 of them in Irkutsk, and the same is in Buryatia. We developed all those additional actions to build local sewage facilities. We have also monitoring established over construction and reconstruction of tracks. We also help to plant additional trees, and we restore the parts of forests and woods that were damaged by fires. By the way, there should be a 1-to-3 relations. That is, for any one cut tree, you plant 3, but actually we plant 7. Overall, in the company, we have a good, solid system of monitoring, environmental monitoring, and we have about 5,000 people employed in that service, and 700 of them are professional environmentalists. And instrumental monitoring is done by 56 stationary labs. 11 are labs that are mounted in cars, and 52 truck-mounted laboratories. They are all certified, and they can do the full range of research and tests of the soil and air. We are also developing for each of the facility an environmental passport, and this is the practice that we have been using for 5 years now and more. And those passports indicate the monitoring status, the sampling points for air and soil when we do our operations. And this is also for the ongoing enterprises and companies like the passenger terminals and cargo terminals, and also for those facilities that are only being built. And those passports will be made public, so any member of the public or environmentalist can have access to such passports. We already discussed this with the provinces of Russia, with the Ministry for Environmental Protection. So these passports are available from our website, so that you can read and look through what is happening in our locations and areas of presence. So we also have hotlines. We have also mass media engagements and where we disclose and discuss what we are doing. Russian Railways is a member of a committee for environmental culture and education of the Ministry for Nature, and we are also taking active part in environmental education to young people and school children, and careful attitude to nature. We are also more or less sponsors of over 50 educational establishments with 50,000 students involved. We also have had a number of various competitions, in particular the Young Protectors of Nature, for example. And the Russian Railways are following this way of the environmental focus, where the main priority is the careful attitude and treatment of nature. In conclusion, I would wish to all of you good health in this time of trouble and concerns, and I hope that through our concerted action we will be able to avoid the disease or other diseases and keep our staff and friends safe. Thank you, Sergey. Sergey, by the way, you mentioned hydrogen trains. We will be discussing more such ideas with our colleague from Austria. But hydrogen trains, is this something of the future, or are we going to receive those quite soon? Do we at all need those hydrogen trains? Well, this is not about future. This is not futurism or dreaming. This is a real technology which exists today, and I'm sure that Monsieur Pégorier will tell us more about that, about their experience with such technologies. Similar developments are available from other companies. Together with Transmash Holding, we signed an agreement together and also with Rosatom, or Russian Nuclear, to produce a pilot train for as a commuter train, as a suburban train. I think that probably this is the most realistic project and economically feasible project for the use of such technology. That's where we're going to use such a train. However, we also see good vistas for such technology across our huge country of Russia, and hydrogen, as we believe, would become a fully fledged means of fuel for railways. I'm totally convinced that in addition to electric buses that we see in the streets of Moscow, we will also see those vehicles, however you call them, hydrogen buses or what. So we also believe hydrogen is not only for the rolling stock as an engine, but we can also provide UPSs or hydrogen-based uninterrupted power supplies for smaller stations, for some technological processes there. This is also an environmentally clean technology and quite of interest to us. So this is not any science fiction, this is something that we'll probably be receiving in the next 5 years, and that technologies would be coming affordable. Colleagues, we have like a free discussion format, so please, as we go, if you have some questions to the speaker, please ask your questions, and just let us know that you would like to ask a question, and we will be providing you the floor. I would like to ask Mr. Philippe Gorier, those hydrogen technologies that you are promoting, are they not too expensive? Would they be economically feasible? It's not about money. The question is not about money. The question is of political will. If you have the political will, you will have money. And a recent example, you know that we have COVID-19, we have the crisis, and the French government, the German government, and the EU, and the European Commission, they all provided financial support to their economies. That system of support has a big section about clean transport, including creating a hydrogen industry to produce hydrogen. In France, they are investing 7 billion euros. Germany is investing 9 billion euros, and there will be some European money involved. So as soon as you have the political will, you will have the money. And I think that all this process is very important to Russia as well.
Европа есть первый клиент России, Китай второй, может быть, через несколько лет будет наоборот, но все-таки это не важно для моей презентации. И хочу сказать, что Европа хочет быть carbon neutral, то это значит балансировать такие эмиссии в 50 году и теперь в 60 году. Что это значит? Что этой страны есть, они не захотят, что они будут вложить деньги так у себя, и что производят и как сказать, производят, так и не будут позволить эмиссии углекислого газа за границей. Они будут установить систему. Это Boston Consulting Group так уже недавно об этом так объявил, что это будет большое затраты для России. То лучше сейчас вложить деньги, потому что в 50 году это долго, но это не так долго тоже, чтобы адаптировать всю российскую экономику и всю российскую промышленность на эти условия.
But it seems to be quite far away, but it is not. So let's invest money now. Hydrogen to us is the future. We are the only company in the world where our trains are already running. We already, a few years back, invited our colleagues from Russian Railways and Transport to Germany, because although we are a French company, we have our production in Salzgitter in Germany, which produces the hydrogen trains with the support of the German provinces. We had a presentation, and we actually took tickets, and we're taking those hydrogen trains. We're riding them. People actually checked our tickets. Those trains are already in operation, I can tell you. The waste is some steam and some water. That's it. And the passengers, our colleagues, I think were quite interested because there was no noise at all. They were very quiet. And so it is very comfortable. You mentioned what could be the solutions for Russia, A, B, C, D. I would agree with all the 4 points with Mr. Kobzev here. I would say A, B, and C. It's hard to choose between the first 3 options of the answer, and it depends on the situation. It depends on the particular line or section of the road, and it is going to be a mix between all the options here, which is quite natural. Well, our trains that are running on hydrogen, they can run to a distance distance of 1,000 kilometers without any
те же самые,
refilling
скажем,
needs,
чем
and almost
ну,
the
конечно,
same
они, конечно,
running distance
дороже,
as
чем
diesel trains. Of course, they are more expensive than diesel trains.
Но, естественно, не
But
надо электрифицировать линии.
of course, you don't
То
need
все зависит потом,
to electrify
какие
line.
вложения
And
компания
the question
хочет,
is
как
what
компания,
your
так,
investments
сама
are going to look
компания
like,
может
what the
управлять,
railways
так,
want to do
Что я могу сказать,
about
что мы
their
единая компания,
investment
которая
management. We
представляет
are
в
the
мире
only
так, всю
company in the
гамму,
world
такие
which
электрические, так,
provides the
поезда,
full range of
и
trains,
электрические, так,
electric
с
trains and
аккумулятором,
hydrogen trains,
здесь это на
electric,
дистанции 80-100
which are
километров,
also
когда
battery
есть такие
operated
промежутки,
too, which
которые
can
не
run to a distance of
электрифицированы,
80
и тоже,
to 100
естественно,
kilometers
водородные,
for the
так,
non-electrified sections of the
водородные.
railroad, and also
Ну, что вам
hydrogen
сказать,
trains that run
это
on
для нас это будущее.
that
Будущее
run on
почему? Так,
hydrogen.
потому что
To us, this
мы
is the
начали, почему мы
future.
начали в Германии? Мы начали в Германии, потому
Why
что
we
сначала в этой
decided to
стране есть
launch
очень
in
большое чувство и
Germany?
политическая
Because in
воля,
Germany
такая
there is a
очень
lot of
так,
political will and
декарбонизация,
sentiment
скажем так,
to
экономики и
decarbonize, so
транспорта.
to say, to decarbonize the economy and transport.
Сильно
A
поставлено.
strong party of the Greens and also political will. That's the first thing. Without
мы не
that,
обойдемся. Так,
you
то это
won't
важно. У нас,
do.
конечно, важный такой
That's important.
завод. Но тоже там рынок, потому
But
что
there's
такого
also
в
a
Германии
market
самый
for such
большой флот
technologies. In Germany, they have the biggest fleet of diesel trains.
Вторая страна потом это Великобритания.
Then comes the UK and then France with a number of diesel-operated trains. So we started off with a country which has a bigger market and a will. And we also tested those trains. And
как сказать, в Нидерландах, так сейчас идут так в Австрии и так далее. Потому что мы думаем, что... Видите, как в Москве сейчас. Мэр Москвы не может заказать дизельный автобус. Мэры больших городов так уже не могут
So mayors of big cities are no longer able to procure diesel buses because people don't want that. People don't want to drive in those diesel buses with the heavy black smoke being exhausted. So in a few years' time, the same story will happen to railroads.
Посмотрим, как будет развиваться.
We shall see what we shall see. Well, we shall see that they are going to evolve. The question is about money. Well, you will find money. You can always find money. There's a central bank for that, right? So you can find money. So, colleagues, if you need money, please ask Mr. Pegorier for money because he knows where to take this money. So, the question that we are voting on, I would like to ask of Mr. Alexander Liberov, President of Siemens of Russia. What is the most efficient mode for Russia? First of all, good afternoon to all of you, and I hope you are all in good form and health. You see, I selected a good background with the colors of Russian Railways, so sorry for this background. I can tell you as a TV person that bright colors are always good, at least it's catching. Now, answering your question, you know, I would probably answer this as a lawyer. Lawyers would never give you any clear-cut answers, so they would always say it depends. And of course, electrification is the best way to improve the environmental trace and print. So, and the energy should also be clean and green. Or you mentioned renewable sources of energy. And so we should not forget about the way power is generated. Also, we are increasing the share of renewable sources, and Siemens is running a number of projects in Murmansk of building 2 wind parks there in Ulyanovsk region. They are also building another wind park, wind farm to run the motors of the power generators, and despite the loss of cheap gas and other resources, still the government of the Russian Federation and the Ministry of Energy are paying a lot of attention to renewable sources. Electrification is the better way of doing that, but we also need to think about the economics behind. And of course, the electrification of many sections would cost you a lot of money. And I know that as part of the initiatives of Russian railways, this is also a point to discuss. That is electrification and environmentally clean railways and the investment policy, of course, because any company, of course, including Russian railways, need to be looking at the economics. And of course, we can talk about hybrid technologies, including hydrogen and batteries, and that's where probably I would
Я
stop.
хотел бы вас спросить, на российских железных дорогах мы знаем прежде всего
In
ваш поезд
Russian
Сапсан.
railways, we
Как у
know
него с
your
экологичностью,
Sapsan
есть ли тут
train.
еще
Of
что
course,
улучшить?
what about its environmental imprint, and how can it be improved? Well, Sapsan, of course, is a leader among, fast trains, and the proof of that is that there's a growing number of passengers, and it is a successful project for us as the supplier of such trains, and also a successful project for the Russian railways. We know that the economics of this section of the road is quite good, and a testimony to that is that we signed last year an agreement to supply 12 more such trains. That's the Sapsan fleet is going to grow from 16 to 29 trains, almost twofold. And this, of course, tells you about the level of trust and confidence and satisfaction of our customers in this train and its product. So we know that trains are running on time, and of course Russian railways can be proud of the fact of the strict scheduling of the trains between Moscow and St. Pete. And the colleagues, of course, would agree with me that railways in many countries can probably borrow this as a benchmark.
As regards your question about energy efficiency of this train, well, we have to remember that Velara platform, which was used for developing this train, was designed almost 20 years ago. In those times, it was state-of-the-art. It complied with all the requirements regarding aerodynamics, operation, climate, and comfort. Russians love this train. Many people take this train to travel, but the industry is developing, and we are now designing new green energy efficient technologies. And this week, on the 20th of October, as part of the 10th year anniversary celebration for our plant in Russia, we signed an agreement with Russian Railways and Sinara Group and Ural Locomotives and Siemens. This was a four-party agreement. We signed an MOU to develop high-speed railway transport in Russia. In brief, the main idea behind this MOU is to develop a Russian high-speed train, to develop that at the Russian Railways Engineering Center with the technical contribution by Siemens, but it will result in a totally new Russian train which will be manufactured at the Uralsky Lokomotiv plant. And this train will have the localization to 80%. In designing this train, we will make use of all the new technologies, including the energy efficiency, because this is important both environmentally and economically, and aerodynamics for high-speed trains is one of the key drivers of energy efficiency. So it's extremely important to make sure that we properly design not only the body and the locomotive, but also the roof equipment or the car equipment to ensure the sleek design and proper aerodynamics for this train, which will result in low energy consumption. In the next few months, we will negotiate this project with our key client, Russian Railways. But we do hope that Uralskaya Lokomotiva will be able to submit the technical proposal for this project by spring next year. As to the global ecological trends in railway transport, the most non-environmental mode of transportation here is diesel-run trains which operate on non-electrified network. A possible alternative to that is using fuel cells. Such projects are usually subsidized by the government, and I do agree that it is to a large extent a matter of political will to protect the environment. Siemens is a great champion of environmental technologies. We have developed fuel cells for trains, like in Desira train, the prototype for the Lastochka train operating in Russia. We have developed a prototype equipped with fuel cells, and it's able to run on both electrified and non-electrified network. Plus, we developed a new platform, Leo, that's the name of the train. It will be equipped with hybrid propulsion system, including fuel cells and hydrogen engine. These trains are very compact. They have only 2 cars. And we expect that they will run on short distances up to 100-120 kilometers, carrying up to 100 passengers, and they fit very nicely into the commute paradigm. This should become a very good commute platform for non-electrified network as well. If there's no electricity, the train may run on batteries. We have developed the project in Germany. In March this year, we signed the first MOU to produce 20 trains, and these trains will be used to commute passengers in one of the most densely populated areas of Germany. I absolutely second everything that Sergei has said about the hydrogen power, and I think that it's just a matter of time. In 3 or 5 years, we'll be able to see hydrogen-powered trains on our network. Well, thank you so much, and it's great news that there will be more subsidized trains in Russia, because, you know, there's not enough of them on this route from Moscow to St. Petersburg. It's next to impossible to get a ticket on subsign if you want to. Thank you so much, and good luck in Russia. And now I would like to invite Mr. Tatu Tuominen, connecting from Helsinki, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, everything is perfect. So how would you answer that question?
Mr. Tominin, I suppose you don't hear the Russian translation. May I ask you, how will you vote, how would you vote in our survey that we have begun with? The majority? Electrification?
No, that's true.
You in Scandinavia, we know you as people who are very sensitive to ecology questions, but in Finland you still have diesel engines on your railroads. That's why. Please. Okay. Okay, go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you. And we can just go to the next slide. Please, next slide, please.
Следующий, пожалуйста, слайд. Okay, we see it. Could you tell us more about it?
I think you missed one, but we can keep it here. So basically, I have 3 points to make before going to those 3 points. So I would like to emphasize, and I think it's on the slide that we missed. It was one there before this, but the thing is that we are has actually developed a new vision. Yes, this is the one that you in English it's taking that together for a better world, which actually means that when we do well as a railway company, it also benefits for the world. The point here is that we take this sustainability and responsibility issues very, very seriously, and we also look at the United Nations as a company who are supporting those goals as well. You can see them on the boxes below. And today, I just want to focus on the 4 goals: the environment, agriculture, AIDS. Next slide, please.
Следующий слайд, пожалуйста.
My first point is that we need to continue the modernization of the railway network, also increasing exit rates, increasing rail capacity, developing railway yards, but most of all, continuing the electrification of railway. Electrification has been a long-standing project in Finland and we have reached good results, but there is yet more to be done. However, with growth and up to 95% of our passenger trains run on 4 hydroelectric power. We also compensate for emissions on routes where it is not possible to run on hydroelectric electricity. On trains, train traffic already 79% run on renewable power-generated electricity, and our goal is to increase the percentage to 90%. It requires further electrification of rail network. On the right-hand side, you can see an illustration on how the CO2 emissions are reducing with use of electric traction. It is obvious how this works, and in just 5 years we have been able to reduce emissions significantly. Main thing is to start to lower basic emissions and start with basic electric network. So this also one competitive quality of rail is possible. So it is like in the railway industry. That was my first point. My second point was the next slide, please.
Следующий слайд, пожалуйста.
My second point is to join scope and especially traction of locomotives. They are investment with multi-job locomotives that are more efficient. At the same time, they are environmentally more friendly in many ways, use less power or less fuel, and can operate heavier trains. We have started to use those Siemens Swift locomotives in 2017, and
Следующий слайд, пожалуйста. Yes, yes. It sounds a little bit strange that diesel locomotives could be environmentally friendly. Do you strongly believe in it? But you don't have, and you don't have plans to eliminate completely diesel engines from your trucks. You don't believe in battery solutions and hydrogen solutions, all what Mr. Pegorier told us about. Thank you so much. Good luck, Mr. Tominen. Сергей Алексеевич, я хотел спросить вашего комментария по этой теме. Вот господин Томинин говорит, что вполне реально модернизировать тепловозы таким образом, чтобы они...
Could you comment on that, please? Mr. Tominen says that diesel engines can be modernized in a way as to modernize so that emit less particles into the environment. What do you think about that?
Сергей Алексеевич, слышите ли нас?
Sergey, are you with us? Can you hear us? I thought you were addressing someone else. So, if you're interested in modernizing diesel engines, which helps to reduce the particle emissions, Well, I think that it is possible to achieve a 20-fold reduction of particles emissions by more efficient operation, where you would burn in 800 kilos of diesel, for example, instead of 1,000, and this would reduce the environmental impact. But clearly, gas is much better than diesel, and hydrogen is the best gas as fuel for locomotive propulsion. There is no alternative to that. Well, we are absolutely happy to see so many successes of our Finnish colleagues, and we wish them all the best and would be happy to learn from their experience.
Немецких производителей автопрома.
I would like to give an example from the German experience. You know, the German car manufacturers invested billions of dollars to modernize car diesel engines. But you know, people, they don't want to buy diesel cars anymore. They want to buy electric cars. They want to buy some other cars, but they have to be green. But you are talking about B2C segments. Well, yes, but still, the passengers, they can also have their say. Well, passengers, they want to pay less for the ticket, and that is it. I think that among passengers, there's also this movement towards greener transportation as well. I know the person who knows everything about diesel engines. Mikhail Rashkov, the technical director of Transmash Holding, is here with us. Mikhail, first of all, how would you answer this question that we asked in the very beginning? Well, if I may, I would like to briefly follow up on this discussion about the diesel engines, but you will have a whole presentation about that, won't you? But yes, of course, but the presentation will be dedicated to a slightly different topic. Well, first of all, I would like to say that any improvement of environmental properties of a diesel engine results in lower performance.
And this would actually bring up the cost of transportation and shipment. So a 20-fold effect of benefit, this is just, you know, science fiction. At least this is what it sounds to us. As far as voting is concerned, and here perhaps we need to remember many factors and a formula with many unknowns. Electrification is probably the most efficient way of improving the environmental impact of the technologies. But we are talking about sparsely populated areas, and there I think we need to minimize and try to bring to zero the level of maintenance of infrastructure. Hence, my voice would be in favor of alternative types of fuel. We soon are going to learn the voting of the audience, but your presentation will be about the comparison of the environmental friendliness of different locomotives. Well, perhaps I would discuss a few things and start with a couple of points. First, as a point of discussion, I should note that the level of impact on the environment of railway transport is less than 1%. So railway transport is only 1% or less than 1% of the total environmental impact. Cars, trucks actually have a share of 15%. Second, again, as a point for you to remember, is that the level of environmental friendliness is also something related to energy efficiency. And energy efficiency to railway transport is also an important factor. Railways are very energy efficient, and their performance is 4 times better than cars and 40 times better than planes and ships. A couple of words about the trends. The colleagues here already mentioned a lot about that. So today in the world, in terms of the alternative sources of energy, we have 2 trends. First, hydrogen and batteries. Hydrogen to a less extent, perhaps. However, there are many projects in the UK, Japan, that are related to the use of hydrogen as fuel. Indeed, let's take some numbers and try to compare from the point of view of the environmental imprint, the different sources of traction, diesel, gas, batteries, electricity and hydrogen. And of course here I would like to say that environment is not only about green gases or greenhouse gases. It is also about soot, it is also about nitrogen oxides, it is also about sulfates, etc., something that we also need to tackle. Now, from the point of view of the greenhouse effect, all those traction types, the leader there with almost zero emission would be hydrogen, batteries, and, contact electrical grids. That's almost like zero emission in motion. When we are talking about the environment, we can not only take into account the motion, we need also to talk about the generation of these types of fuels. Let's call it fuels. And of course, here, hydrogen is starting to lose, and batteries and the contact grid are becoming the leaders. Gas and diesel. Well, if in motion hydrogen, batteries and electrical grid have zero emissions, then gas in units per 100 kilometers of running, then gas is 550 to 600 kilos of emissions of CO2. I mean, if you put in also the production of gas. And diesel is from 700 to 750 kilos of CO2 emissions per 100 kilometers track section. And of course, switching over to gas from diesel would not save us from this impact. However, gas can more or less avoid the other toxic emissions that I mentioned above. In terms of production, gas seriously wins over diesel here, because we understand that the production of gas is more or less like the production of natural resources. For diesel, you need to not only to extract natural resources, but to process the oil into diesel. Now, in terms of the environmental impact of various fuels, I would probably draw the following picture of the future. Which kind of propulsion of fuel could be the best for railway? If you take, short distance running, I would say that there we would probably be using battery operated engines. And I'm talking about non-electrified facilities and sections. I mean, if you already have an electrical grid, I mean, this makes no sense to switch over to battery operated trains. When you take longer distance trains, there are some debatable issues there, but perhaps there will be two trends. One would be for commuter trains and even within the city limits trains. These would be battery-operated trains or trains running on wire, and we need this last mile. And I don't know, you're running on wire, and then it takes another 10 or 20 kilometers to reach the end station, and there you probably use batteries. For other purposes, you would use hybrid trains, trains that would use batteries and other forms of fuel. For freight purposes, for cargo trains, for heavy trains, again, I mentioned something about electrification there. That I said that there's a big issue now about electrification of cargo trains, but here I would say that we would be upgrading to gas-operated or gas fuel-operated engines, where we would actually be able to get rid of the sulfur oxides and soot, but then in the longer term we would again upgrade to hydrogen operated trains. Even in the shorter period until 2030, we don't see too many good vistas for batteries there, even for the small trucks and fleets where batteries would have the proper capacity and weight. As an example, we actually estimated what would it take in terms of the batteries needed to take a train which weighs 6,300 tons of cargo, and we need 20 full cars that are filled with batteries to run such a train. So we are talking about big losses, and it is not feasible right now. Now, what are the challenges facing the industry? Even not the railway industry, but the adjacent industries in terms of creating those efficient technologies for alternative fuel. Of course, for batteries, like I said, we need to improve the efficiency per kilo weight and per 1 kilowatt of power. And of course, we need to think about the the life expectancy of batteries. If you take the lithium ionic batteries, they have very few charge and discharge cycles to talk about. So, I mean, we need to improve that so that they can be economically competitive. So, this is a painful point, and if we go to Tetamak, then it would be 10,000 cycles of charge and discharge. But we would love to have actually 40,000 cycles for any economic feasibility purposes. In terms of hydrogen, then we need to think about how to store and carry hydrogen, so that we would really maintain that efficiency from hydrogen. And again, we're talking about some heavy requirements for storage of hydrogen, which you cannot forget. And of course, the green production of hydrogen itself. There we work with Rosatom, and Sergei mentioned that we signed an agreement with them to create a hydrogen train together with Rosatom and Russian Railways. We hope that this is going to be the first attempt at such a hydrogen train in Russia, which would use the hydrogen fuel cells. Now, I'd like to end with a description of two projects that we are running with Transmash Holding on alternative fuels. currently, these projects do not receive any considerable support from the government, unlike our European friends and competitors. So today we are trying to come up with a design for the battery-operated train, for the computer trains, as part of our agreement with Russian Railways, and with another major partner of Rosnano, and we are now building a hydrogen train together with Rosatom and Russian Railways. The two key projects, two early birds, so to say, for alternative fuels. They would set the moods and perhaps would make it possible to implement those technologies in a broader manner, so to say. Thank you very much. Thank you, colleagues. And in conclusion, I would like to wish to all of you good health, stay healthy in this difficult time. For the first time we are holding this forum in this very unusual format. But I'm happy to see all my colleagues here. And, we talk to each other less and less during the pandemic, so I'm very much can see you there. Well, the inoculation effort will start soon, and I hope that the next forum will be held offline. So as a person with some medical background, I would say that I'm very optimistic for us to have that. Now, the floor goes to our academia, and then we will have the slide with the outcome of our voting. We already have certain results. My question is to Andrei Ptichnikov, Deputy Director of the Center for Natural Resources, Institute of Geography, Russian Academy of Sciences. So, in your opinion, are we going to receive any environmental benefit from all of this? Of course, I'm very much impressed by the program, which is being deployed in the Russian Railways and in Finland and in other countries. But going back to your question, the way I would have voted, I would probably join. I mean, on those points, we were talking about direct emissions, how to cut down the direct emissions of transport. However, there's a bigger effect of cutting down the indirect emissions, because transport consists of materials. Steel, for example, the rolling stock is steel, and the tracks are steel. There is also crushed stone that is used to build a track. So this carbon imprint includes different things. You have also steel, which is produced with an emission of 1 ton per ton of produced steel. But there are also steels which are produced with the emission rating going to 3 tons per ton of steel produced. So low impact steel could be, if it is broadly used, could be the key breakthrough in ensuring environmentally friendly and safe operation of railways. That's something to remember. Now, we are serious about climatic neutrality, and this is the way to go for many railways, including Russian railways. We need to really pay our attention to a number of those issues. And then this whole discussion of whether to electrify or not, whether to use diesel or hydrogen, this is another question. We are trying to really calculate and assess the carbon imprint of the whole system of the environment. And I would vote for the reduction of both direct and indirect emissions as a key factor of becoming environmentally friendly. Being climatically neutral is a new paradigm which makes us think differently. We thought in the past that we just need to to reduce the emissions. We thought really quite rarely about greenhouse gases. Now we are thinking about greenhouse gases. Now, becoming environmentally friendly, we need also to take everything into account. Deutsche Bahn and British Rail and other railways, they all announced that by the year 2050 they would become climatically neutral. I wish Russian railways in the environmental strategy would do the same and would claim the same.
Что такое понятие снижения углеродного следа?
What does it mean to bring down the
здесь и прекрасная работа ведется по снижению прямых выбросов.
Of course, we are doing a great job in trying to reduce the direct emissions.
Находится в том, какие материалы мы используем для производства поездов, какие материалы мы для производства рельс, откуда мы везем щебень за 1000 километров или за 2000.
The crushed stone, whether we take the crushed stone to 1,000 kilometers to build a track, or we take that crushed stone locally. So different imprints and different impacts on the environment.
Еще я хотел бы, вот следующий слайд можно, каким образом мы вообще будем достигать вот этих новых показателей. Успех зеленых облигаций РЖД, еврооблигаций, говорит о том, что необходимо каким-то образом, скажем так, адаптировать те экологические стратегии, которые есть сейчас, например, российских железных дорог, к тем требованиям, которые есть вот в этой программе Environmental Social Governance, этой платформе, могучей финансовой платформе. И необходимо вот провести настройку для того, чтобы лучше отразить то, что хотят инвесторы.
It can better reflect the needs and wishes of investors. They want to have climatic neutrality of big companies. They want to reduce the carbon imprint, both directly and indirectly. They also want social and other environmental
других параметров социально-экологического
improvements in the impact
это очень тоже как бы принципиальный вопрос. И если РЖД хочет позиционировать себя как именно лидер в таком низкоуглеродном развитии, необходимо вот эту настройку провести.
Спасибо вам большое. В 2005 году в России был создан институт проблем естественных монополий, независимый научно-исследовательский центр, и его гендиректор Юрий Саакян сегодня тоже с нами по видеосвязи. Я хотел спросить, Юрий Завенович, вы анализировали в том числе и зеленую трансформацию российских железных дорог, и к каким выводам вы пришли?
You have analyzed the railways problem, so what are your conclusions? Well, according to our evaluation, Russian Railways is one of the leaders in minimizing the carbon footprint. Of all the global companies, Russian Railways has the lowest CO2 per unit of goods transported ratio. The lowest CO2 per gross ton kilometer. And Russian Railways is one of the proponents of tightening carbon regulations in Russia and globally. But I may say some blasphemy, but you know, CO2 emissions, they have nothing to do with the environment. It's more about economics and finance, but this topic is high on today's agenda and we have to take it into consideration. The reason why Russian Railways is so exposed to risks associated with tighter carbon regulation, because first of all, this carbon regulation may lead to tighter carbon regulation for energy, and since Russian Railways consumes so much energy, this tighter regulations may lead to decline in volumes. Western countries, especially the EU, are the most exposed to this risk because the European Commission has declared its movement towards carbon neutrality by 2050. Russia is not there yet, but there is still a chance that the Russian government will make the same decision. Plus, trans-border regulation in Europe may result in reduced deliveries from some of the Russian producing industries, like steel making, for example. So the movement of steel products may go down too, which is a huge risk for Russian railways. But if the new regulation will require the calculation of the secondary footprint, including the carbon footprint from the mode of transportation used, this may become an advantage for railway transport in competing with, say, automotive transport. And number 3, the climate policy of a company is becoming a huge driver of its financial indicators. We have heard about ESG, environmental, social, and governance aspects, and lenders and insurers start taking ESG into account when they're making the decision. As it has already been mentioned, some of the biggest lenders have stopped financing those projects which are involved in producing fossil fuels. So this may increase the exposure of Russian railways due to the high percentage of fossil fuels used for traction. I won't exclude the risk associated with some stigma behind fossil fuels, which may affect the new issues of Russian railways green bonds. Speaking about the secondary energy, this may also be affected, and this may reduce the capital mobilization prospects for Russian railways, because it does consume a lot of energy. So we think that the way out would be to ensure the neutrality to the freight moved. We can adapt Russian railways in 2 ways. First of all, reducing the carbon footprint of the company, and Russian Railways is already doing that. There's no doubt in that. But the further reduction of the carbon footprint, as it has already been mentioned a few times, it would require further reduction of fossil fuel consumption by higher electrification and increasing the share of renewables. And the second area is new regulatory framework, which is extremely relevant in view of the recent decisions by the EU, because the proper calculation of the primary and of direct and indirect carbon emissions becomes of paramount importance. And now, by updating the methodology, we can reduce the calculated emissions by at least 10% by 2025, thanks to reducing the greenhouse gas emissions in the Russian power generation industry. we may achieve an additional 1.5% of indirect emissions at Russian railways. Thank you. Well, thank you so much. My dear colleagues, you can ask any question to you. So, I assume that you would choose alternative fuels in our poll. Well, I wouldn't say that because I don't believe that you can address this issue with one thing only. So I think that you should add electrification on top of that too. Okay. Let us look at the results of the poll. We see that large-scale network electrification is the most popular at 45%, upgrading rolling stock is 25%, and 15% each goes to alternative energy sources and alternative logistics arrangements. So these are the results, these are the things that we will have to do. I do hope that this discussion was useful to the professional community. I do hope that these measures will be implemented to the benefit of us all, railway companies, passengers, because we all live on the same planet and we breathe the same air. I wish you all the success in your work, and I wish strong health to us all and to our planet. Thank you. Thank you.